Oh, not yet. We're not live yet. Are we live? We're live.
Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning.
It's another episode of Content.
Yeah.
February 7th, 2021.
2021.
In the year of our Lord, whomever he or she may be.
Man, in the year of source.
In the year of our source, Jesus Christ.
So, I just want to say, kind of out of nowhere here,
Please do.
that everyone who says this is too early, I bought into that.
Uh-oh, folks, we're calling you out.
You're full of it. Because I have this funny little post I put up about a riddle, kind of like a mathematical riddle. And people are answering that thing 6 a.m., 6 something. Probably, excuse me, it's too early.
Too early?
No, that is not a proper excuse.
It turns out we're 2 hours too late.
Yeah, we're 2 hours too late.
And so to the extent that it's like, well, I can be involved in a thing and I can't with you. You can comment on the show. We always put up the comments.
We love the comments.
We're here.
We
join the discussion.
We always, I'm going to say at least 80% of the time, the only time we don't flash a comment is usually if it's like very, very off the topic that I've noticed, like, we'll look at something like that really is not going to fit into here. That's the only time, which is pretty rare. And sometimes, our conversation will lead us in a different direction than this comment was at this time, and it doesn't work. But the point is, you can come on content. You could be a guest on the Wednesday show if you wanted to. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, let us know. Talk to us.
So, you know what? That's a decent point and a decent starting point, Mike, because I was thinking about that same thing too. And here's the deal. I think we should reframe, as Marianne Williamson would say, a miracle is not just a ridiculous thing, a incredibly unlikely thing. All it is a different way to look at something. So here's why we do the show at 8 a.m. is because you don't have to watch it live, of course. You can watch it when and wherever, as a matter of fact. But we do it at 8 a.m. on Sunday so that it's ready for you whenever you want to get to it.
Exactly.
So maybe you're not up. Maybe you are up, but you're not on Facebook. You're not on YouTube. You're not on the Apple Podscast. But it's ready whenever you are. And if we didn't do it so early, it might not be ready for you.
That's right.
So I don't want to say we're martyrs out here.
Yeah, but so we're going in the kitchen before everyone wakes up.
That's right.
We're cooking up a nice breakfast here.
That's right. Get the bacon out of the fridge.
So, and then we put it on the table and we wrap it in aluminum foil so it's nice and warm.
And we wait for you to get home.
Whenever you get up, it's fine. But if you're up now, it's that much better because you can jump in on the conversation and get down into the content playing field.
That's right. And to Mike's point, apparently we found out you guys have been up for 2 hours already. So
yeah, I thought
I don't know. What is the post that is resonating so much?
It's just a riddle. I put a riddle. A friend of mine, Ellen, and she had a riddle, and I answered it, and it's kind of a comical mathematical post, which you can. It's interesting too because you can interpret the answer in a lot of ways. So I don't even necessarily, and I even joked when I answered it because I was like, well, if this, then it's this, and then and then at the end of it, I said, I have questions for this person,
Right.
And it was because it depended on so many things because it's sort of a riddle. But then I went with what I thought would be the most common answer that with the information, I happened to get it right. So then once you get it right, you're committed now to share it. So I shared it. And to my surprise, everyone's always complaining, it's too early, the show, it's too early. But from 6 a.m. to now, several people.
Thousands of people are commenting.
No, several people have responded to it. So I'm like, wait, it's not because we're not really up before everybody. This is just it's a trick everyone's played on us to not watch the show. Friends of ours,
Well, folks, you're busted.
You're
Okay.
busted. We
The
got
dig
you.
is up today.
It's all over. We got you. And well, I'm glad we're here though.
As am I. Of course, Michael, we'd like to extend another thank you to Mr. David DeAndre,
yes,
the Naked Baptist, his book forthcoming. He was our guest this past. The Naked Calvinist.
Yeah,
wow, I got to change the episode title. Oh, my goodness.
Maybe the Naked Baptist will be the next one.
That's the sequel.
Maybe you just gave me the idea.
Maybe so.
Wait a second.
Oh, shit.
I got the follow-up. Thanks. But it's the Naked Calvinist.
David, of course, had a fascinating story. He was a missionary in the Ukraine before Jesus pulled the rug out from underneath him and said, David, this stuff ain't true. And a fascinating, very interesting story of how he had to put his life back together. And it was such a kind gentleman, really a great guest. Very good guest.
And very, very... it was cool to get into some things that we've never even some I've never really thought about much, and stuff never necessarily even brought up.
I know, yeah, and he certainly did. Between he and Julie McVeigh a couple of weeks ago, added some interesting things to our content gumbo.
Sure did.
And I would also say, with those two guests, similar to your story, Mike, that I always found so interesting is that you went through a difficult religious experience, but were able to actually get out of it through not necessarily more religion, but more, let's say, spiritual teachings. And I think so many people would, from an outsider's perspective, say, if you had a difficult experience with a religion, you would want to reject all of that stuff completely as totally useless, which may or may not be the best path for any given individual. But I do find that fascinating. David kind of falls into that camp too, where he is a religious person now, but a different kind of spiritual religious person than he was 20 years ago, let's say. So of course I did find that quite interesting.
Yes.
That being said, Mike, you got a haircut and you look great.
Well, thank you, sir. You're looking fine yourself too.
Thank you.
As usual.
So what do you say, man? What's been on your mind, Mike? What's rattling around in the noggin there?
Oh man. So what's been rambling around is I'm feeling a lot of empathy for the baby.
And what baby might you be talking about there, Mike?
The baby everyone keeps throwing out with the bathwater.
I'll tell you, Mike, this culture nowadays, we're taking that plug that plugs up the tub in the bath, and we're just yanking it clean, and the baby's toes going down, and we're making coffee. We're not looking. And his waist is halfway, and we're not paying attention at all. And he's just going, shoo.
Yeah. Poor kid.
That's not good.
And I've been thinking about that a lot because I feel like that, and I understand disillusionment. You know what I mean? And if anyone understands it, I think I'm qualified to say I understand disillusionment. Yeah. And if anything, I understand it so well that I had to dig out of it with much work. But man, I just tend to see, just a lot of things where like you jump into something. And when you jump into it, you kind of go all in and you kind of forget anything good that might have been left over. Morning, Anna.
Yeah. Morning, Anna.
So it's kind of like, for me, it's like, for example, I mean, there's this, like when you see a car and for the first time, let's say a red, whatever, like, when you're doing punch buggies back in the days or.
Oh, yes.
Never
punch buggy.
Remember that? My God. I don't even know. I mean, that might be too old for you even.
No, I know. I'm familiar with the punch buggy, of course.
So, but then all of a sudden you're seeing them all, there's not that many, let's say, but then once you notice them, now they're everywhere and you're like, punch buggy 1, 2, 3, it's like, and your arm's starting to hurt. And it's like, for me, as I started to think about that, I started thinking about different concepts. There's even this concept out now, where it's about a safe space,
Mm.
and we talk about that too when things get overused and stuff. So there's this idea with a safe space, and when you're in a safe space, no one. I think the original meaning and intention of a safe space and holding space for someone, I think they're like brother and sister, those two kind of sayings.
Mm.
It was always meant because we didn't listen to each other. We kind of talked over each other. And so a safe space and holding space kind of go together to me, because you're holding space, you're giving that person a chance to express themselves, and it's safe because you're not going to like put them down and, for feeling how they feel. But I think that it's gotten to a point where it's been overdone, baby bathwater scenario, where it's like there was value in it, but now they've just completely made it so you can't even, like, a safe space is basically no challenging, just making each other feel good, just congratulating each other, just like great. It's very difficult to really be a good friend if you're in this, in quotes now, safe space,
Mm.
and you can't really say something that's going to help the person, because you're going to be looked at like you're not allowing this person to like express themselves. And as wrong as they may be, you're just supposed to kind of leave them alone on that journey. And I've got beef with that because someone like me, I look back on my journey, and damn it, if I wish literally not one person ever came to me and was like, that place you're in or this and that, I don't know about that. I mean, not even a family member or many felt that way,
Mm.
but they never really gave me a hard talk enough to kind of like risk the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that, and that's why I keep thinking baby bathwater, it's like, because it's like, just to create a safe space, it doesn't seem right, and I got my Pema Chodron haircut back.
So
And that's
good.
probably
Shout
why
out
I'm
to
feeling a little bit like, I got my hoodie on, my Pema Chodron, and that's maybe why I'm feeling a little buck over here,
You're very, very austere this morning.
Yeah, I'm feeling, a little tough. 'Cause I'm on my Pema vibe. Pema, I should say. And she's tough, and she challenges. When you read When Things Fall Apart, she's just kicking your ass. She's saying stuff, and that's how you really help people. And then I take that into other things. When you leave from one religious perspective to another, people, tend to disregard. There's a lot of people leaving, Christianity, let's say, and it's like it's just garbage to them. You know what I mean? Complete, utter garbage.
Yeah, well, that's like what I just said a minute ago, where people are like, I had a bad experience with that. So, yeah, I'm getting rid of all of it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me because there's, just because I get a different perspective, or I realize, the rug's been pulled out from under me, or the Wizard of Oz in the corner, I pull the curtain and I'm Toto, and and we're all coming, and like, hey, we just, because you get that, it doesn't mean everything is Emerald City isn't Emerald City.
Yeah.
It means, oh shit, this is what's going on. And instead of just, I feel like we have this, one of my pet peeves, is splitting thinking.
Yes.
And I really believe a lot of this is attributed to our splitting thinking, as Dr. Ivan would say, the way our brain processes things as this is bad. It only has enough bandwidth to do certain things. And if something is dangerous, it labels it dangerous and pushes it away just as a survival thing. And the splitting thinking, I think, is what kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. And I feel like the spiritual, this is all, obviously my opinions, but And I feel like the spiritual, the heart, um, is more able to not use this cognitive functioning, and see past that and work through something and find the good in something without just it being total, and it's and I went through a phase where I felt that way, but I sort of worked through it, and
Mm.
I'm not to say, obviously I'll never believe some of the things I did believe, and I've moved away from them, but I honestly don't have an animosity towards a whole community
Mm.
because of that. It just seems extreme to me,
I would agree, Mike. And this reminds me of something you said a long time ago in an episode was, people who say that, you know, in order to be my friend, like if you're a person with negative, if you ever
Oh
like have a
yeah,
fight with
that's
me or
another.
anything, like I'm cutting you out of my life
Yeah, yeah,
instantly. Anna brings up a good point here now too. So there's a time for a safe space and a time for a true friend to say the hard things they might not agree with.
amen.
Being a true friend, you're not really there to say what they want to hear. You're there to be supportive, and that friend is headed down dangerous path. Why sugarcoat it? Also, good morning to Les.
Hey, good morning, Les. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's such a great point. And it's what I like about it too. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's showing balance. It's showing sometimes you need to hold the space, listen, and other times you've got it. And that's splitting thinking. It's
Yeah,
either
it is.
pat on the back, love bomb,
Right.
or be a
Everything's
complete
amazing,
or could be a complete asshole.
or everything's
Why
awful.
can't you love the person? That's what I'm saying. It's this splitting thinking that just murders us.
It's
From
true.
closeness, from relationship. Why can't we just do both?
Yeah.
Why can't we? Why can't we just love the person, hold space, and then if there's something difficult to say it in a non-judgmental, loving way? Like, why can't we 1 + 1 = 2 it? Why does it have to be 1 - 1 or whatever the hell, some mathematical equation, I don't know,
Representation of this.
something.
Yeah, it's a good question, man, and it is based off of the erroneous notion that you can be happy at every point in life, and
Oh
that
boy. It
if
is.
if you are not happy, it's your fault. There's something defective with you, and you need to not be that way.
Yeah.
So, because that impulse, that not impulse, but rather that push is so strong, when we do get into moments where we feel tight, stressed, sad, whatever, we do everything in our power. And of course, let me just say, I do everything in my power to convince myself that that's not real. It's not important. It's not, in fact, necessary, dare I say. We need the devil.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, it causes you to like push people away, push things away, push
Yeah.
opportunities away. And I know I always use this Delilah quote, Mike, but character is carved with a knife called pain.
Yeah. And
And if you do not have some pain, and I don't wish pain upon anybody, but the Buddha's first realization is that all life involves suffering.
yeah.
And when you insulate and inoculate yourself completely from all negativity, you're in fact in a way more dangerous spot than you would be if you were to merely harmonize with the events of your life and the people and things around you.
Yeah.
Anna says something cool here. I push or pray until something happens.
There you go.
It's kind of a good way
Yeah.
to go about it, I think.
And that's good. You pray and you're doing something.
And
Push.
can I add a couple things here, Mike?
Yes, please.
Is there anything you wanted to say about that just now?
I just wanted to throw a quote in
Please
from
do.
Kate Tempest, one of probably my favorite like contemporary poet. She says a line I've said a few times before, and I'm going to paraphrase. That those dogs that come and bite you, if you wait long enough, they will be the same ones who kiss you in the mouth and bring you your slippers.
That's right.
And man, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like you know, if it's those and also, sorry, just one more thing.
Go ahead.
So this has been on my mind a lot, and they've been talking about on Courage to Continue, like you could say our sister podcast.
That's right.
They've been talking about which is Ivan's podcast and my friend Jose, and they've been talking about the villain, and it's very much like what we said. You need the devil, you know,
right?
That villain, like the villain. First off, I'm the villain. We've talked about that in many people's lives. That's first off, and that's something that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. And the villains in my life, were it not for them, they would not have. I needed them to, you know, the probably the greatest villain in my life. Push me to read, push me to learn, push me to discover how I love knowledge, how I love to read. I've got a bookshelf now. I take courses. Never did that awaken in me, but thanks to my villain, it did. So if that ain't the dog who used to bite you, bringing you your slippers,
right?
Then what is? And their suffering is grace. I think when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you're really, and let's think about that. The baby is life.
Yes,
we can look deeper into that. The baby is life. Baby is the point of the water. The water's there for the baby to clean.
Support the baby.
Support the baby.
And in fact, to cleanse the baby, if we would like to take this metaphor further.
Right. So when you throw the baby out, you got nothing, man.
Right. And then you're left trying to construct an entire worldview and an entire existence without any help or without any...
Yeah, in an empty tub.
In an empty tub. And, humans have been around for a long time. And while, yes, we're very different now and there are unprecedented ways that we live, a lot of stuff's probably still the same. If you read Socrates, it's still pretty resonant. If you read Jesus, it's still pretty resonant.
Heck yeah.
And it's really a shame to completely cut off the connection to history. Because it just makes life more difficult. I mean, that's kind of just all there is to it. Isa has a great quote here. Good morning, Isa, from Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond. And this is something actually I've been meaning to bring up, and I'd like to talk to you about this now, Mike. But Dr. Raymond says, the most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we can give each other is our attention. Amen.
That's a great quote.
And so... If I wanted to tie this into what we're saying here, well, I'll say this. I started reading this book called The Culture of Narcissism by Christopher Lasch. It's a very popular book. I think it came out in like the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. And he's saying, basically, I'm not all the way through it yet. It's very dense, kind of difficult read, but that's just because I'm not the smartest guy. But
well, you remember you're talking to the guy who reads like one page and meditates on it for a couple of weeks.
But if it's a good page, why move on? Really take it in.
That's me.
And his argument, one of his arguments in the book, is that because all of our communal and community-based organizations, be they bowling leagues or churches or unions, have been more or less systematically destroyed over time. That we have absolutely no sense. This drives to a lot of people's neuroses and fears and stuff like that, because you're kind of like living in a vacuum and you don't have this sort of bedrock of compassion that you would if you were growing up and the people in your church looked out for you, or you grew up in a small town and everybody knew everybody. So, if somebody fell on hard times, they would take care of you, whatever. Well, you have such a lack of compassion and love. And again, that like this bedrock of self-love and communal compassion with which to experience life, that everybody has this giant void in them now. And one of the only ways that we see to be able to be loved and be compassionate is to be a celebrity. And so especially, and he wrote this before social media, but especially now, Everybody wants to be a celebrity. And why? Well, partially because of the money, but partially because you want to be loved. You want to feel adoration. And of course, celebrity is an absolute trick also, because being a celebrity also sucks. It just sucks in a different way. You can't even go to the grocery store anymore. And yes, again, materially, yes, sure, it's great to live in a mansion. But look at every child star pretty much winds up being a ridiculous drug addict and crashing their car, and either having to go through tremendous suffering and then coming out of it, like somebody like Drew Barrymore or something, or you just have a terrible story, like somebody like Lindsay Lohan or something. And yet that's the thing we're all striving for. Why? Because we need that sense of connection. That's something we've had for 248,000 years. And then, maybe the past 2,000, we've gone down a different path, let's say. So because we're so individualized and so atomized, I know I keep saying that the past couple of weeks, we don't really, more and more, because we're so individualized, and now everybody's literally locked inside. It perpetuates this drowning the baby with the bathwater, where you don't want to hear. I got all my answers from the internet, man, and from the television. I don't really need to listen to what you have to say, because you need to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah. I figured this thing out.
Right. I've got it down. Okay. And that, of course, is very dangerous and very, it's a bad path to be on. So back to the quote that Issa brought in here, the most basic and powerful way to connect with another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we can give to each other is our attention. When in an age of social media where we're constantly seeking attention, I want you to look at my thing. I want you to read my thing. There's something I've been meaning to bring up to you the past couple of weeks about the difference between listening and hearing. We hear all kinds of stuff all day. Yeah, I hear you. I hear it. But listening requires an openness.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, like a presence that hearing does not.
Yes.
So the example I would use is take any conversation you've ever had with anybody. And this is very delicate, but it's such like a moment to moment kind of thing. But here's how I think it most commonly manifests. You're talking to somebody, right? And you're listening at the beginning. It's like the first 5 minutes that you sit down in math class, you're listening, and then your mind starts to wander. You're listening. Then somebody says something, and it triggers a thought in your own head. And you think to yourself, ooh, I'm going to say this. Maybe it's a memory, or maybe it's something that you saw, but it's related to what this person is saying. And you say, ooh, I'm going to say this. But the other person isn't done talking yet. So they continue talking. But now the whole time that they're talking, all you're thinking is, when they're done, I'm going to say this thing. I've got this thing. I definitely want to.
Yeah, I'm certainly guilty of that sometimes.
And like I said, I'm not indicting anyone by doing this. I do this constantly. I'm just trying to be more cognizant of it, where you're just waiting until their lips stop moving. So you'd be like, and also, by the way, one time and then the great travesty is the person does it back to you. So you start to tell them their thing, and you get 6 words into it, and they go, oh, I'm going to say this thing. And so now they're not listening to you at all.
Yeah.
And then you finish, and they go, oh, yeah, well, that's just like my blah, blah, blah does the same thing. And 2 people can have a very long conversation wherein they're not listening to one another. And the whole thing, despite there being 2 individual parties in the conversation, is incredibly self-serving. And very little may well be gained other than reinforcing our own convictions. So that's hearing. I heard what you said. Yeah, I heard it. Okay. Now listen to my stuff.
Now hear this. I heard you. I hear this now.
And I have lately tried to work on listening requires having absolutely no preconceived notions of where this thing could go and listening entirely from the beginning to the end of this person's verbal offering to you. And then once they conclude, having listened to the totality of their statement, then take that moment of integration and say, that's interesting. What about this? That, I think, is listening. And of course, that's what no one does on any television show. That's for certain. Again, we always talk about, like, has any CNN argument ever ended in the one person going, "Oh my God, you're so
dare
right."
say that's revelation through conversation.
That's it, Mike. You're absolutely correct about that. And I don't want to toot our own horn, Mike, but people have asked, like, how do you do the show? How do you go on and talk like this?
Yeah.
And honestly, what it is, man, is, well, at least part of it is that you and I have a love and a respect for one another, wherein I know I don't know more than you. And I'm interested and fascinated by what your contribution to the world is. And so I'm not really like looking to like, we're not really ever trying to like beat one another on the show.
You keyed in on it because I feel the exact same way about you. Exactly. And I know, and I think this is the key. If I can be so bold as to say something like that, the key is to know you don't know. Okay. To understand that you do not know everything. And secondly, to completely also know that not just, and this is the trick to me, like I have utmost respect for you, so it's very easy for me, and you drop jewels all the time, and that make me think about things and re-examine things, so it's super easy for me to do it for you.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Is what we do here actually is pretty easy.
So what I've been working on is to acknowledge, because I've been on the other end of it, and I'm realizing that you have to really realize that absolutely everyone, without any exceptions, can fill in a blank for you. Yes. From the lady that crochets to the homeless man on the street to someone who has a second grade education, to someone who has a doctorate and on and on and on of whatever, the most studied person in the world. They all have something to offer you. So even if the person is arrogant, even if the person is loopy, where they just keep repeating the same thing, and you dropped a bomb jewel this week in our texting. You said even if someone unconsciously gives you jewels, right. And that's the key, to understand that even beyond the language and the words, someone's behavior, what they're doing, even if you see past it, there's still so much to gain. Yes. And I think that if you really believe that, as I do, I actually believe that. It's not like a thing I'm just trying to test out. Like, I believe it because it's happened too many times, where it's such unlikely sources of information that just blows my mind and makes me think, whether it's unconsciously they gave it to me or not. And even within synchronicity, if you're constantly looking for these moments and these things, you should certainly not block anyone out, and sort of, and that's one of the things, the baby, the bathwater. I really believe this still connects, because if you block something out because you think you've been there and you know all about it, and there's nothing more left there, you're losing out.
Yeah,
you're losing out yourself. More than anyone. You're hurting yourself, because surprise you as it, it may completely surprise you that, although you've been through something or that situation, you just shouldn't turn off the listening anymore, because there's so much we miss.
Yes.
We've got this tiny little bandwidth, and we need each other to see the whole picture. We've talked, I think I've mentioned this before, where like I don't know, I stole this from somewhere. And, I think it was a teacher said, all his students are like a pixel on a big blackboard, right?
Mm.
They're just like a pixel, including himself. And all together we form this picture, which is humanity. And we're all necessary for it. And if you don't utilize that person's positioning and what they see in their experience by communicating and gaining, then you're just going to always see where you are in that little pixel. It's just there, this tiny little place where you are.
Mm.
And there's so much we cannot see. There's just too much. It's like,
right.
And I think we have to, and that's splitting thinking keeps us in our pixel.
Definitely.
It keeps us pushing away information, pushing away, it. And then you just click with other people in that same, right next to you in the pixel. It's like you're this little pixel and you're like, oh yeah, you're right here with me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you're right here with me too. And there's these pixels all the way, you know how the pixels are when they I don't know, we're tech guys, so that's how they make them look, like these little tiny things.
Little,
and if
guys.
yeah, they would be like these little bubbles if they animated pixels.
Right.
I see them all like these little bubbles looking at each other.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, bubbles, right? We put ourselves in these bubbles.
Yeah.
And bubbles, my bubble, I'm in a bubble, you're in one. And if we really don't reach across, we're at a loss. And I think if you don't believe that, what I just said, then you're done. As we say many times, no more living. You figured it all out.
Right.
And you have to constantly, to have these conversations, to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to constantly really humble yourself. I don't know. This is where I'm at right now. And like the thing you said, I love that from that interview you did with Harrison. Harrison always has something that we grab, that's powerful.
Agreed.
But we have to keep having him on because he always says something really powerful. And the 10-year thing.
Yeah.
Look at a picture of yourself 10 years ago, and you can look physically and see a difference. Every day you don't feel like anything's changing, but if you did that, you'd be like, wow, my God, I've changed so much. And then another 10, and on and on. And let's take it to the internal, who you were. And look at me, my 10-year ago me, talking to the 10 years later, we might go to blows. We might go to, what the heck did you do? You know what I mean? You left this and you're doing, oh my God, you're going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
That's my 10 years ago guy. You're going to hell, Mike. You put us in hell.
You're gonna ruin it.
You ruined. Oh my God, they were right. You are the devil. That's that guy.
Right.
And I have to be cognizant of that. Like if and then even more humility to know that my consciousness doesn't even agree with itself sometimes.
Right.
And that's the most basic battle we have.
Yeah.
Oh, you should do this, Mike. No, you shouldn't. That's pretty stupid. Why do you think this is me? I don't even agree with me. So let's just humble ourselves a little bit, let's just like deflate a little bit and be like, and you know what? It's a big weight. It's a big weight. You got all this ego in your backpack. You're carrying around this giant ego, and you're not even being a good pixel because the ego's pushing your little other pixels away. It's so big. Even the pixels that are next to you, you're like, get away from me. You're like bulking up, like you're like a meaty pixel. You're juicing. You're full of all this ego, and it's like you gotta let it go, man.
Yeah.
And let's save the babies, man.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's not throw them out.
Anna brings up another good point there. Humility is knowing you don't know everything and being ready to learn. And
I like that.
more and
And
more,
being
it
honest.
seems, yeah, which requires an honesty with yourself first and foremost, and with other people too. And yeah, I mean, it's like we mentioned a couple weeks ago on the show, like, well, we talk about a lot harmonizing with the things that happen to you in your life, which can be difficult to do because, well, life can be stressful and it can be terrible. And, well, I don't like it. So what's the deal with that? But a better way to kind of phrase that or cage that or approach that is allow your life to be magical. Allow your life to be, our technology obsessed, scientific obsessed, largely atheistic worldview in America now has removed a lot of the magic of life. So if you walk through life thinking, I've got to figure this out, I'm the only one who can really know me, who can really find any actual truth. You can certainly walk through life like that, but I do think it's exceedingly difficult.
It
But
sure is.
if you walk through life with an openness, then you can gather very important teachings from anywhere. And like Mike said, like I had mentioned, they might come from someone else's subconscious and not necessarily, it's not like a homeless guy walks up to you. He's like, you should call your mom later. Although I'm sure that has happened to people and they may well be right. You should give her a call. But if you walk through that life with that openness, but being egotistical is very hard. It's very hardened, stiff position.
Mm-hmm.
And as Alan Watts says, the world is very wiggly.
Yes.
We have to put a grid over the world so that we can measure it and remember where we've been and where we're going. But the grid is not the world. The wiggliness is the world.
Is the world. And that is so, by the way, guys, Derek, you did a phenomenal job on the last reading. You're getting into it. I'm enjoying the way you're reading now a lot. And he's been reading Watts and it's phenomenal. If you guys want to catch it, he'll post up when he's going to go live, and it's really cool.
It will be Tuesdays. I got lazy because of the snow day last week, and I did Thursday.
Well,
normally it will be Tuesday.
We have that. You were being wiggly.
Exactly. So, in a way, I was proving Watts'
You were proving it, and that's fine. and I really love that, because wiggly is who we are. It's so true. Yes. When you become rigid, you become cold. When you're moving away from the what we describe as the light, what we describe as love. You're moving away from these things when you're not wiggly, when you're rigid. And I even dare say that there's an alarm that goes off, and I remember this from when I was in my fundamentalist cult days. I had this feeling of, why doesn't everyone just get it? Why don't they just understand?
Oh, yeah.
We've got the truth.
And doesn't everybody feel like
What's wrong with all these people? Why can't they would come and they would have, some people might interject and good morning, Vivian. And so it had all this stuff. And I was like, man, why can't they just get it? Why can't they just, and if you're feeling that way about anything, whether it's a conspiracy theory, it's vaccines, I don't care what neck of the woods your pixel sits in. If you're feeling that way, that's the alarm. That means you're being rigid. That means you're not being wiggly. You're not going with the flow. You're not being wind and water. That's what we need to be. We need to flow. We need to change. We need to move. We need to be alive. We do not need to be stuck, stagnant. And here's the kicker, guys. You're never gonna get the whole answer.
Yeah, you gotta come to terms with that.
Let's get over ourselves, Let's just get over ourselves. It's been hundreds of thousands of years now.
Right, yeah.
And if anybody with a grain of honesty in them knows, despite our technology, despite our magnificent science that we have now, despite our go on and on. But despite the fact that I can hop on a plane, on a jet and get over here in 2 hours, despite all this greatness that we can pat ourselves on the back for, the human condition, our emptiness, and everything, if anything, is accelerating. Despite all of our things we can congratulate. So let's think about that, So if anything, it's the same as it always was and it hasn't changed. I mean, there's a few ways to look at it. I guess you could say it either is the same as always or it declined. It was higher up when we were cavemen because we had maybe more because we weren't using language as well. I think the more we started to use language, the more difficult it because look at just God, right?
Look at him.
I don't even know what to call this guy anymore because source, Jesus, Muhammad. I mean, it's just language, guys.
Yeah, right.
Like, get over yourselves, everyone. It's just language. I must be channeling Pema because we've been talking about that stuff a lot. So I'm just do a little joke in there. But listen, let's not be so serious and take ourselves so serious. It's just a word. Language is very limited.
Right.
Very limited. That's why spiritual experiences are so powerful because you get a message.
And they're kind of beyond language.
In your prayer closet or walking down the street or through synchronicity. That's like way better than reading something on a page, a book, a text, a conversation. Nothing will listen. You guys out there if you've never decided to seek and experiment with the source of everything and our synchronicity, our oneness, and you've never done that. And when you start, it's pretty damn awesome, which is the magical way of living that Derek is talking about. It's pretty cool. And that's how I know. See, you have to have something to compare things to. That's why you got to get out of your boxes. Because I know language is limited because I've had experiences like that, which made me know how limited language was. I was like, because I got a message without words. And it was more powerful and clear because it came with emotion. It came with love. It was crazy. So I know that trumps language a million times. Imagine if you could just go up to somebody. Imagine that. And how you feel, everything about how you're feeling right now about something, you could just transfer that to them.
Yeah.
That's better than language. Way better. Because language, you can spend your life trying to convey a message. And that's why stories are so powerful, because you can write 1,000 pages on why something is bad or wrong, and people won't care. But the right story that could only last 2 minutes will convey that message to that person and even change them. Which is why I believe we use myths and things like that and stories to communicate messages, because technically speaking and trying to win an argument, it really doesn't do anything.
I think you are correct. And it makes me think too of something Watts says, that every person is really just like a series of events, or like you're constantly in flux. He calls people whirlpools. So a whirlpool is like, hey, somebody says food is the universal language of love. Let's break bread, Mike and Derek. I think we should.
Listen, you're speaking my language. Food. Let's go. Anybody knows me knows how I love food.
Watt says that every person is like a whirlpool, where there is a center to the whirlpool, but the things that are rotating through it are in there for a little bit, and then eventually they get shot out and new things come in, and some things last longer than others, and some things come right in and shoot right out, and that there is a center to it, but its contents is constantly changing. And whether that's like David DeAndre had mentioned, like every 7 years. I haven't thought of this in a while, but I say like your cells in your body completely
Absolutely.
change, or your like tastes,
Yeah.
your interests change every 7 years.
But just I hate to stop you, but I just want to interject there because you know how we always talk about the lady who crochets. That's sort of like this. You went scientific.
Mm.
Every 7 years, the cells change. You can back it up. There's plenty of spiritual texts you can go to about the 7 year thing. But I just want to say that my dad, who was absolutely not studying this stuff or anything, just a guy living his life, he told me that from his own experience. He didn't need to read text, and that's what I'm saying. If you pay attention, if you're just open to things, and he told me, he said you're gonna change, Michael, every so often. He didn't say 7 year. He said maybe every 6, 7 to 10 years. He didn't give it a thing,
Mm.
and that revolutionized how I looked at the world.
Mm.
And he was 100% right, and that's humbling. It's like, really, I am. You're not going to be the same guy in 7 years. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that because I feel it's an important thing, because people get very in spiritual spaces, and it annoys me a bit. People get so heady and arrogant, and they leave these difficult places and they go into other spaces, and the behavior is not that different. That's a whole nother conversation. But
And isn't it a common phrase, let's say nowadays, like, I'm trying to find myself. I'm trying to find out who I am. And with regard to like listening to your intuitive heart, that's a good thing to do and a skill we should cultivate. But if you're under the impression that you're gonna like figure it out and be like, I
yeah,
got it. This is who I am for forever until I'm dead.
yeah,
Um, that is
it's
foolish.
fascinating.
That is thinking yourself as a rock as opposed to a whirlpool.
Mm,
And again, back to that kind of river metaphor. That how do you stay? How does a fish go through uh, a river? Well, you got to swim with the current. Doesn't mean that you are the water.
mm.
It doesn't mean that you're going against God. It just means that this is what's happening. And in order to continue to move and stay alive, you've got to flow with the river, as opposed to the rock who is stuck in the mud, refuses to go with the flow, quite literally. And eventually, this rock erodes, gets worn away, until it becomes a tiny pebble, and then it gets launched into the current anyway.
Hmm.
So there
Yeah,
is
you get there anyway.
exactly. So you can fight against the dying of the light.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? Not to stop you, but
Go ahead.
it reminds me a lot of the stories we hear of people who on their deathbed finally get it. That rock.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
So if you're
true.
hard as a rock and you just stay there, like you said, it erodes you. You stay there. You're this big pixel. After a while, you can't juice anymore because it makes you sick. You get smaller. And then you get like this, and then you finally get it.
Yeah.
And
Which
but you're gonna get it. So be that whirlpool, be that river, flow. Why be the rock, man?
right. Because here's the deal also is this world is magical. And it's so interesting. And I think I don't know if we asked David this straight up, but a question we should always ask our guests is, be they the strongest atheist or anywhere in between, uh, what is the most spiritual experience in your life? What was the most quote unquote religious experience that you yourself have ever had? And I would venture a guess to say that most everyone immediately has, oh, well, see,
Yeah,
this one time.
I would say.
And it's like, well, that's very magical, man. And why? Maybe you didn't think of it as magical, whatever. Maybe you just think it's a series of coincidences. Nevertheless, that series of coincidences, you extracted meaning from.
Yes.
And when you pose it as the question, what's the most spiritual thing that's ever happened to you? Not only did you extract some meaning from it, you extracted a lot of sometimes very profound meaning from it, wherein
Yes.
you made changes in your life, or you decided to look at a big thing in a totally different way all of a sudden. And that's magical, man. And
Yeah.
like you say too, like, well, this doesn't necessarily, you can take it too far. You shouldn't, like, with every step in life be like, is there a sign?
Well, with
Is this a
everything,
sign?
but that's the splitting thinking. See, the fact that we have to
Exactly.
warn each other about that
Right.
is the splitting thinking. Like,
Yeah.
it's about signs. Everything's a sign now.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. They
I
changed
just
the color of the front of the building.
I just saw I just
And
saw a cloud.
yeah, I was looking for a sign, like, oh my God, where should I move? A freight train that says Vermont. I'm moving to Vermont.
I
It's
gotta
like,
go now.
I got to
I'm
go now.
selling my house.
Honey, we got to move. Why?
I saw a
I,
train today.
I said in my head, where should I move? And I looked and there was a freight train that said Vermont. Oh, okay. Let's pack. It's like, you know, everything within balance, and it's unfortunate. And it's really, really, and this is one of the jewels, that I'm getting, as I'm writing my cult story, the troubles in the cognitive when you can't do spiritual with the cognitive. You just
Mm,
can't. You just can't. I know that sounds very like, and I know how much I hate it when people just say you can't this and you can't.
mm.
That's one of my few times that I'm going to, I stand on that. I mean, the cognitive can open you up. So there's the balance, I guess. The cognitive can open you up into the heart because you start to see, well, this and this, and you're picking up things. But ultimately, it's that heart mind, from my experience, that you really have to get in touch with to get into those paradoxes that are not cognitive, those seemingly contradictory things that we call spiritual truths because they're just incredible, but they're true. It's like, whoa,
I think that might be a very controversial point, Mike, but it's one that I
I
would
think so.
completely agree with.
Thank you.
Even Einstein said, I did not come to my understanding of the universe through my rational mind, which presumably he would mean his kind of cognitive mind. Here's a question from a listener. How does one draw the line between skeptical interrogation and pragmatism? For example, we can't just stand on the fence, we must take action. And I think that's what you kind of addressed there, Mike, which is
Yeah.
like, you can't walk through life constantly being like, oh, is this a sign? But really what it is, I think, is you do have to kind of get to know your intuitive heart, which is always rooted in the present. It's always rooted in now. You can't know yourself. You
That's a
can't go
great
back
point.
and know yourself from 5 years ago because all those feelings they're so in the distant past. You can't touch them anymore. You can only actually feel now. So knowing your intuitive heart requires a presence. It requires a nowness, so that there are times, even if you are the most magical person, there are people who are, I will say, not under the impression, I will say there are people who are witches still. They still follow all those kinds of things and they're casting spells and stuff like that. Even they would say, well, not every single moment of my life is completely magical. But there are times where I listen to my intuitive heart and it's saying, whoa, 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 look at that thing. Wait, isn't that like the other thing? Wait, we were just looking at a thing like that.
Yeah.
And if you are able to hear that, you can at least attempt to integrate it into your thought patterns. And it may well change your thinking or your actions in a more, let's say, positive way. And again, it's just more fun. I don't know.
I think, and I also think the key too is like, see how I was kind of like throwing a little bit of dogma there when I was like, it can't be cognitive. I still just, even though I said that, I'm still happy to open a book that challenges that notion. And then I didn't see something. And I'm like, oh, wow. I never looked at it that way. I'm perfectly fine with that. For someone to come and drop something that's like, oh, maybe they work together more, or and even enhance my understanding of it. Maybe I had a hint of it by saying it's not here, it's not there. And what if someone has some more in-depth experience meditating on that, and they connect them more, where it's not, no, they're not separate, they're together, but you need to learn how to make them work. Oh, okay, I'm okay with that too. And that's what I'm saying. We have to, it's okay to reach something and be like, no, that, because when you first learn something, there has to be this, like, because you have to disconnect from what you thought. I feel like there's a process. You disconnect from what you used to think. You stand firm on what you think right now, but you can't stay there.
Mm.
Now you got to be ready that someone else who's been there can even be like, hey, but do you ever think about this part of it? And you're like, whoa, now you can move a little bit more and be like, and then you can disconnect from the other one, stand on that, and wait for something else to come. And I really, really think that's very, very important. And it's simple, really. All this stuff, just know you don't know. Be open, be wind, be water, flow, go with the whirlpool, be wiggly, like the rest of the world. It's really easy, but I really believe it's the splitting thinking. I know that, I know it sounds crazy. Why do I harp on this so much? Because I see it as such a root cause of so much unnecessary problems.
Yeah, I would agree, man.
It's the split. Why does it have to be black or white? Why can't it be gray? Why can't it be a rainbow? Why can't it be some color I've never even, a color my eyes can't see? Why can't it be that?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't my eyes not see a color? Why not? I'm open for that. And I think that's the thing. It has to be X or Y. There's no A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. There's none of that. It's X or Y. And I have a feeling this is Simon. The basics are required for insight, he says, and can't do when you're always in survival mode. Great point. And that's that cognitive, our brain works a certain way. And that's why I'm trying to separate the cognitive brain from the heart and the spiritual. Because the brain at times is going to have to do that. The brain's like way ahead of us sometimes with those things. It's moving, it's reacting, it's eliminating information because we need certain information more. It's taking care of us. Our body's taking care of us. So there's this part of it. But that's what's helping me to think more about separating it, Well, this got to be Ivan, because he's talking about something I don't know about. So
Marlowe's theory of self-actualization.
All right, that's something. Some homework. Thank you, Ivan. We'll be looking that one up. Marlowe's theory of self-actualization.
Oh, Maslow's theory is what it is. Maslow's quote refers to self-actualization, which is the highest level or stage in his model of human motivation, the hierarchy of needs, as it were.
All right.
Well, we'll have to research that.
Yeah, that's probably like
I do think it applies to what you're saying there, Mike.
A big thing to like make us think more about it, probably.
Yep.
So we're into this thing a good hour already. Derek, what do you say? You got any final words, or what's going on this week? I know you've got a Wednesday interview.
That's true. Yes, another good week for content. Chapter 3 of Alan Watts, the book, will be Tuesday night around 7 p.m. Wednesday night we'll have a dear comedian friend of mine, a very funny New York City comic, Zach Candachi, will be joining me.
Oh, very cool.
He's one of the goofiest, funniest dudes that I know. I think it'll be a very fun episode. And then we'll be back next Sunday to chop it all up and figure out what the heck's going on in the world this week.
Yeah, and guys, please share the podcast. We're working hard. I feel like we're having some pretty damn interesting people up here. We've got New York City comedians coming on. We've got former pastors who gone a whole different direction. Former fundamentalists who are going in a different direction. We've got another ex-pastor coming up. We've had someone who's been to how many countries and taken pictures?
I think it's 74 or something.
I mean, these are some pretty interesting people, besides our conversations that we have on the weekends. And I just want to tell you guys, I mean, I'm very happy with the numbers we have and everything, and it's not about numbers. But Facebook don't love us, man. I'm
Why
telling
not?
you, you put up. I was reading about it. You put up stuff, um, and Ivan says he's enjoying how you're reading the book. He's going to do chapter 2 today. Awesome.
Hey, cool.
So the thing I wanted to say is that the algorithms, they want us to pay for ads. It's rigged against us.
Yeah,
it's rigged against us. I have
every single thing we post. It's like,
yeah,
you could reach 10 million people if you give us $10.
and they're holding us back on purpose. So I mean, please share whatever you invite somebody. We're counting on you guys. At some point, you know, hopefully we'll be able to inject some money. But even that's a little confusing because they want you to spend a lot of money, man. So.
Oh,
so that's Lewis. Okay.
Gotcha. Nice.
What's up, Lou? Very cool. Yeah, it's we can't see the names on this here.
Yeah, strange.
But yeah, please share and thank you.
Throw it around, because I also think too, yeah, with the Wednesday night shows and with some readings, we're adding a lot more to the, as Mike and I would say, the content gumbo. And no matter who we talk to or what we're reading, there's always some truth to extract from it, and that we will add to the big stew of spirituality that we are creating here in content.
Yeah.
And I think it's very cool. I think it's a very great process. So yeah.
And selfishly, you know, the selflessness, I'm enjoying it tremendously.
I know, it's really
I'm enjoying
me.
talking to people, learning from them, you know, people that I would never get a chance to talk to.
Yeah,
and
certainly not for an hour about this kind of thing. Yeah.
No, it's a huge honor and privilege to be able to just invite somebody up here, them to say yes, and to learn about those pixels. You know,
exactly.
I think it's pretty damn cool.
Me too.
On that note, we'll see you guys next time.
Great read is the Ragamuffin Gospel. Check it out.
All right. Thanks, Anna.